Welcome to the first of 2023's Centre Court Masters Festivals with Poets and Quants. And if you're in the four corners of the world and realize that it's already noon in New York and 9 o'clock in the morning on the West Coast, that has to be worth at least 20 points on the GMAT because it was only North America that changed time zones, I think, in this weekend. So for the rest of you, wherever you're joining us from Mumbai, from Dubai, from Sao Paulo in Brazil, welcome to the next 2 days with my co-host, John Byrne, the chief editor of Poets and Quants. We love the breadth and variety that this Specialized Masters Festival brings. You perhaps have attended some of the MBA events, but I think this particular festival gives us a tremendous opportunity to look at the incredible number of study opportunities that you have available to you at the world's top business schools. So convening the world's top business schools is how we're starting the festival, and you'll quickly get a sense of the tremendous number of options that are available to us. From the London Business School and those blue skies behind her, Alex promises me, but beyond that screen, it is a lovely spring day. Alexandra Barnett, who is the Recruitment and Admissions Director for the LBS graduate programs. Also from the UK and from London, Aram Karakashian, who is the Executive Director of Marketing and certainly of Recruitment and Admissions at the Business School at Imperial College. From the East time zones, yeah, we've covered a lot of time zones for this one. It's lovely to welcome Renee Bobo. Renee is the Director of the Master's Programs and the Graduate Career Management Center at the Goizueta Business School at Emory. And then West Coast, waking up an hour earlier with the time changes, Paul Brandano. Paul is the Executive Director of the Masters in Business Analytics out of the Anderson School at UCLA. So already with the titles, we've got a sense of some of these different options, and I'll be talking a lot more about Masters in Finance and Supply Chain and Climate Change Management and Finance, Financial Engineering, so many options. Perhaps, Alexandra, we can start with you. A GMAT report that says in 2022, demand for specialized masters has really remained very strong, while the MBA market has perhaps slowed a little bit. Why do you think these non-MBA degree programs are proving to be so popular for aspiring graduate students?
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. Yeah, I think people really are looking to sort of deepen and enrich their skill set. There's a lot of access to things on a specialized program that you can also get on the more generalist programs in terms of your soft skill development and enriching, the experiential elements, really practical elements. But I think people kind of, it's very consumer driven market. They know what they want and they are focusing on it early. And we are living and working longer now. There's still the option to go back and pivot later as well. So I think it's just that there are more options out there now, so not just the generalist but the specialist as well.
Right, and we'll be looking at that early career option versus when you might be looking at doing your specialized master's degree. Picking up on Alexandra's point, Aram, about the market, students know what they want. There's quite a breadth, the portfolio of programs at Imperial College Business School. I mentioned climate change. There's finance as it looks at tech and wealth management and accounting. There's international health management. As we look at that range, does that reflect the market and people say, this really is the focus that I'm looking for?
Yeah, I think for us, our specialized masters align to the strategic themes of the business school and the wider college. Where do our specialities come from? Where do we have expertise in? And where do we feel that if you come and study at Imperial, you'll be able to really build a foundation in that area? That's why we have those programs. I think what we're seeing more and more is that the job market is still very, very competitive. And in certain spaces, you need that extra validation, that extra set of credentials, that extra set of learning that will allow you to be a success in your career at that very early stage. And so often as people are either coming out of undergraduate or working for a couple of years, as they start to find their paths, they realize that actually for them to be a success at this early stage and to be able to accelerate, it is time for them to go back to school, go back to a business school, but give them that opportunity to be in a bit more of a specialized route, whether it is a very, very specific topic aligned to where they see their career goals, or an area that they know is going to give them a foundation for wherever they may take their career.
Right. And in terms of when people might study, Renee, at Goizueta, you're off for there's the MSBA, the Masters in Business Analytics, there's Analytical Finance. Are these programs that people are looking, again, as Aram suggested, to do fairly soon after undergrad to give them that specialist edge?
Yes, absolutely. We see most of our students entering in directly from an undergraduate degree with maybe no full-time work experience. And so a specialty master's program is a great way for these learners to receive a master's degree, maybe without any work experience. And maybe they also cannot take 2 years away from income earning potential. And so the specialty master's degrees at Goizueta right now are both 10 months long. And so the students are able to come in right from undergrad, obtain a master's degree, and then go on to start their wonderful careers.
Right. And you're continuing to think about new programs that in the coming years Goizueta will roll out, so to add to what you already offer?
Yes. So as you mentioned, we have the Master of Science in Business Analytics, and we're expanding to a second track to include artificial intelligence for next year. We're also including a program called ex-MSBA, which is an MSBA for working professionals, in addition to the Master of Analytical Finance. And I believe there's 3 new specialty master's programs, one in particular pertaining to veterans that will be launching in the next year.
Right. So both formats and deliveries, and then different specialists. We'll have to make for longer panels to be able to fit all of this in. Paul, you're focused on the Masters in Business Analytics, which is a hot degree right now. What do you see has driven such demand for the MSBA?
Well, I think I echo my peers here on the panel, and thank you, first of all, Poets and Quants, and to you, Matt, for having us all today. I will say that looking at the market and the way that things have evolved for us over the last 5 years, I think we were lucky to meet the market when it was ready for us. To Renee's point, to take a younger student who's recently graduated with little experience represents a portfolio opportunity for a business school, in particular at Anderson. We can continue to admit our future leaders in the MBA program, and now bring in a more technical, student right out of undergrad, or frankly, who's had a few years in the market, but it now needs to retool and come back and give them an opportunity to present their value to a really hungry marketplace, right? So whether it be high tech or entertainment or healthcare, where there's been lots of investment in business analytics, or emerging markets, mom and pops, everybody needs their own data scientist today. And if they don't need a data scientist, they're probably building out their data science team more broadly. So it's a really interesting and exciting time to run an MSBA program, because we get to be in the mix of all of that.
Right. You'd mentioned, Alexandra, earlier, studying an early career master's program wouldn't then preclude you from coming back and doing an MBA perhaps in your late 20s, or LBS also offers the Sloan program for more senior professionals in their 30s. What do you think might be that attraction? So early in their career, they get this wonderful accelerator booster, and something that employers really do appreciate.
So what's the attraction of coming back for mid-career as well, was the question, Matt?
Well, I suppose if I've then got the option of the MBA later on,
Right.
but it's going to give this fantastic sort of accelerated start to my career.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's why a lot of people do enroll in sort of the graduate masters, similar to Renee. A lot of people join us straight from their undergraduate degree. They are looking to stand out in a competitive landscape. A lot of undergrad degrees, maybe quite theoretical. I think particularly, there's lost opportunities over this time period because of COVID as well. So that, I would say, is why the market, to your earlier question, is very buoyant at the moment as well, because people do want to enrich their sort of full skill set. We certainly do have students who then go on to do the MBA, whether it's required of their career, or they realize they want to pivot, or perhaps geographically they want to make a switch, and all of those reasons still make sense for them. I think the graduate programs are a wonderful opportunity, as you said, to make the acceleration. It's not just about year one, it's kind of year 2, year 3, being able to really get up and get on in that organization. So I think that's what that level of program brings to you, as well as the network that you're extending and creating, and the global opportunities that would be open to you that maybe otherwise might be a bit more difficult if you don't have previous experience in those geographies, or have opened those different global networks as well, and really experience some of those challenges and all the wonderful things that they bring as well.
Yeah, well, LBS, Imperial, a lot of top European business schools offer the Masters in Management, and Aram, that's part of the portfolio, broader general management. But as the discussions that the school has with employers, and they say, no, as we think about the challenges in healthcare, as we think about, you know, the future of tech, as we think about the future of finance, are they themselves really excited by candidates that have that specific sector knowledge?
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree with that. All of our programs in the business school are built with employers. When we craft the programs themselves, employer consultation is key, because there's no point us developing skill sets and teaching students that are not going to be applicable in their careers at the end of the day. So we have to make sure that what we're doing with the program, how we're teaching the students, how we're keeping it relevant, is a pathway into those careers. And I think, because of the nature of who Imperial is, being a STEM institution and having those specialities, employers naturally look at us to be the type of business school that will develop in these areas and ensure that there are graduates who are going to be able to go and be a consultant in a healthcare company that understands both sides, the life sciences, but also the management side. Or, for example, is someone who is going into let's say a clean tech startup, but understands the financing behind it, understands how to go and talk to VC companies, not just the big idea. And it's those skill sets that we see as being very valuable, and employers certainly are looking at us and saying, we need you to develop these individuals so that we can bring them into our companies and help them become the leaders of these companies in the future.
Right. Renee, you mentioned, you know, many coming into the MSBA and analytical finance straight out of college or early years. And as I think about where my head was coming out of college, I think I had no sense of where my career might be heading, if there would be a career at all. Do you find that the discussion that you have is really then helping them to think about skill sets, the job market, not just, you know, next year, but over the next 5-10 years?
Yes, absolutely. But I will say that the capstone projects and the practicum opportunities in both of our specialty master's programs also help with some of that heavy lift. These students are exposed to a real business problem with a real client. They're able to work with a data set and create some data science solutions, and sort of get a sense of what it would be like in the real world to work with a variety of different clients. And that's very helpful for the student to have that exposure. It's also a really great talking point for them in interviews, to reference back to a real experience that they've had, since many of them have not had the full-time work experience before. But we also offer one-on-one coaching sessions and a full professional development course where students are they're coming from all over the world, and it's very exciting to have those diverse perspectives and different worldviews. And many of the students want to take advantage of the STEM OPT and stay in the United States to work and start their careers. So we really work with the students where they're at and try to help them reach their goals. Yeah,
I can see how also that additional coaching that you're providing, and all 4 schools provide wonderful careers guidance throughout that period. I mean, Paul, if I was thinking, hey, you know, analytics, everyone's talking about big data, but I missed that in my early 20s. Do you still see individuals that are using the MSBA at Anderson, or even financial engineering, to come back to school at a later stage of their career to fit into this hot trajectory?
We are actually. So we see about a third of our class every year, and that class is getting bigger this year to about 120, come from greater than 3 years work experience. And we're careful not to cannibalize our MBA, because typically in a historical MBA program, you're waiting till you're 3 to 5 years in. and you're retooling, leveling up, breaking a ceiling, whatever that MBA will do for you. And we see that same opportunity in a quantitative degree, like an MFE or an MSBA. And here, of course, we're also recognizing that these roles coming out of MSBA programs or MFE programs are ones that are continuous learners. There's no way that you're ever going to stop learning programming, right? Today it's Python and R, tomorrow it could be Go, it could be any number of things. And so we try to get ahead of that, make sure that a person coming back, because they haven't retooled, learns to do that on a more continuous basis. And I think that will future-proof to some degree these more technical specialty master's degrees, and give our candidates the opportunity to start as the bridge between technical and senior executive and become that data-oriented senior executive that the market so needs.
Right. Here the five of us are meeting in the week when the collapse of Silicon Valley Bank has sent tremors through the financial system. As we think about the Masters in Finance, Alexandra, perhaps, people saying, the markets have been great for lots of years. I can, on my own bat, I can pick up CFA level 1, 2, 3. Do I really need to go back to school and get a Masters in Finance? Maybe those perspectives have changed in the uncertainties of the last week. What do you like to say to candidates as they look at sort of on-the-job experience in CFA versus that immersive commitment that they then be making at LBS?
I mean, we are a CFA partner. I'm sure many schools are as well. So we have overlapping elements in our curriculum that will help you make the preparations towards that. I think the CFA is a wonderful qualification, but obviously it has its limitations as well, and it's not going to have the experiential immersion as you just mentioned. The finance sector, yes, it's tough across the board. I think whether you're at the early career or sort of the mid-career stage, but it's also a great time to then think, okay, well, I can park that opportunity for 1 to 2 years. I don't need to be in the recruitment market right now. I can upskill myself. I can really focus. I can get myself to stand out in the market. So I think that's what's great about these opportunities. And we saw that, I think, through the pandemic as well. More and more people turned towards education to sort of see them through and sustain the longevity that they want to have in that career. But yes, it is incredibly competitive. I'm sure we will see some shrinking in some of the immediate positions and future positions, but these things come in cycles. They don't last forever. We can help upskill you in a multitude of different ways as well. And as you said, great career centers at all the schools helping to make you fully ready. I think that's probably one thing. If you are coming straight out of your undergrad, I'm sure there's lots of wonderful undergrads with career centers, but they're often having to give that service to so many people. And I think that's what's great about graduate studies and really focusing, that you have so many more opportunities. You can really deepen your network and you can really spend the time being coached. Whereas something like a CFA qualification, you can absolutely do, but it's a lot of sort of self-study and hitting the books. And you may find that actually once you're in the program or exiting out of either the early or the sort of mid-career finance program, that you have the tools that are going to allow you to do the CFA alongside it or shortly afterwards as well.
And I'm guessing, as the only one that can remember financial crises of the 20th century, I hasten to add that they were in the second half of the 20th century. But as we go back to 2008, 2009, Aaron, this idea of making an investment in yourself, even being part of a community, and Imperial College Business School, it might be a difficult year, and the financial tremors of the last few days an indicator of that. Are you always going to be better with the qualification and with the support of that network than just facing the markets by yourself?
That's a very good question. I think for me, the value of a business school, beyond just the program that you study, is the people that you're in the classroom with. Those individuals are going to be part of your network and part of your life for the future. And you may call on them the first day you graduate, 1 year after you graduate, 5 years after you graduate, because you're at another colleague's wedding or another student's wedding. And to have that network at your fingertips is a very, very powerful tool. I think you don't really get that in a direct company. even if you're an individual who is working in a company that is, say, a multinational company and you travel all the time, you don't build that kind of foundation naturally. And it's, I think, only built in a business school where you are studying together, where you're learning together, where you're being forced to work together, understand each other's different cultures. So I see that as being one of the strongest value adds of going to a business school at a young age, is building that network, because that is going to serve you further forward. You may find that you may end up working for one of your classmates in the future, or you may find an alumni that is connecting you in different situations. I think these are the sometimes the hidden secrets beyond just the academics that really strengthen the value of why going to a business school for a specialized master's is so important.
Right. And Goizueta, of course, has this dynamic and thriving community running. The same thing if I'm in the Masters in Business Analytics program, but on campus, you've got MBA students, you've got PhDs. I mean, there's a wonderful bringing together of people at different stages of their careers. Is there a mix and you know, it's all part of one big community and network?
Absolutely. I echo what my colleagues have said before me here. We have very similar experiences and advantages of earning a business degree from Goizueta Business School. Not to mention the community of the Atlanta business community has just been a great resource for us. And as more and more companies launch operations in Atlanta, we continue to expand our partnerships here within the region, and that's I think another advantage for students to be able to take advantage of not only the network of their peers and of the alumni of the school, but also the business community who is eager to partner and for maybe experiential opportunities or capstone opportunities or internships, and then hopefully for recruiting as well.
Yeah, I'm imagining that the capstones that you described, Renee, earlier, are this chance to take a much closer look at a company, for them to take a look at you. And do those very often then conclude in job offers for graduation?
So I would say it's still developing. And so I would say there's not exactly a correlation between a student working on a capstone project and it converting to a job offer. But what we see is the company then maybe having more of a partnership with the university from a recruiting perspective, because they've been able to sample the level of skill and aptitude of the students overall.
Right. Paul, I suppose the same question within the Anderson community and you know, how they then thrive. A lot of interaction, and even the idea that MBA graduates and MSBA graduates might end up starting a venture together. Do you see a lot of sharing of experience and making new friendships and connections?
Yeah, it's absolutely a key focus at Anderson. We talk about one Anderson all the time in that regard. So we think about the realities that we are a laboratory that will ultimately become a full-time job, whereas an MSBA working in analytics, you're partnering with the MBA, and often an alum who's been out a while, and you're becoming that voice of the data to them and their technical representative. And that's complicated for programs, because you have to think holistically from the beginning, right? We have to think about, in our admissions process, we call it a unicorn hunt, because we want a person who is both technically able at the very highest level, as well as this sort of natural sense of business and an ability to communicate. We add improv to our program 4 times throughout the cycle, with the idea of bringing that out of people, because it's generally something that needs to be, taught as well as learned. And so it's a very interesting outcome to see, when you're giving them both technical skill and challenging them to become their best, speakers to power, if you will, and to be a partner to the business, how important it is then to be surrounded by MBAs who ultimately will be that partner in the real world as well.
Well, tell me, Paul, because with this idea of data and analytics, one word that often comes up in that same discussion is storytelling. Now, what role does that play, and how you're, sort of facilitating that in your program?
Yeah, so in fact, we have a constant infusion of industry. We're 15 months in the program. We first start with a 10-week career curriculum, which is focused on specifically that, on sort of shining in every way you possibly can, from the very technical, your resume and cover letter, of course, in the traditional sense, but also beating the algorithm and then getting through series of interviews, right? After that, we give them 20 weeks of industry seminars, which is a weekly infusion of a 3-hour course developed entirely by an outside executive, with the idea that the real world is going to tell us actually what they're looking for in a very real way. And that course is unique because we're actually asking our students to present to each of those executives in small groups at the end of every 3-hour session. So it's a bit of a Trojan horse, actually, because there's a natural affinity for each other by the time those companies leave. And we found that it's really the best way we can stay current and really have our finger on the pulse of real industry.
It's the Trojan horse story that ends well.
Exactly. Yes.
With International Women's Day last week, Alexandra, and of course History Month, the Masters in Management has long achieved levels of gender balance that perhaps exec MBAs would aspire to. Speaking to individuals and when they might go to business school, when they might study, do you think that this is something that is a factor, that the Masters in Management and LBS has such strong gender balance?
Yeah, it's a great question, Matt, because we do talk about it, I guess, the differences in the programs, but I think it's one of those things that maybe isn't always, or the issues faced at that early career level are maybe a little bit different to those faced at mid-career. The barriers maybe around having a family, for example, or childcare, or balancing caring responsibilities, may not be there at that point. But I think it's absolutely a consideration of students coming in, and I think it's something we should always be robustly assessing. And it is part of, say, the FT rankings, for example, that looks at whole companies, so not just the students, but also women on boards. Are we practicing what we preach? In the UK, we have to publish our data around any gender pay gaps as well. So I do hope that people do consider it when they're looking at the programs, and I think it's a testament to the investment that the school is making behind that. It isn't always possible. We have to be realistic. Like when you look at the candidate markets, you can only recruit what's there, but trying to put in that extra effort into securing students, whether it's through scholarships or the strategies that you put in place around events, and ultimately creating that sense of belonging. I think that's why people want to come to LBS or whichever other business school they do eventually pick, because they feel that sense of belonging. And I think that is to do with the transparency and the openness and seeing yourself represented, that students will be well placed, well taken care of, they're taken seriously by the people that work at the school as well.
Yeah, we published a piece on poets just yesterday that talked about the importance of inclusion and sort of identity within the community. One of the things that always emerges, Aram, is the need for flexibility for men, for women, but just as we build our careers. And of course, Imperial has made enormous strides, a real pioneer in Europe in the online delivery space. A lot of the different options that you have are also available in an online or a blended format. Talk a little bit about that and how the delivery might also then influence some of the study choices that our viewers might be considering.
Yeah, so pre-pandemic, we had a well-established global online MBA. And this program is built and delivered in a unique bespoke online space through Incendi, the platform on our hub platform. And so for us, we, as you said, already had that expertise available, and we took that to some of our master's programs, and we launched an online MSc in business analytics and a strategic marketing online as well. These programs are designed to complement their face-to-face counterparts, but are very much built for the online space. I think it's an important notion to understand, because when we have looked at how we can ensure flexibility in our face-to-face programs, those programs that our candidates and our students come to on campus, we have taken learnings from these environments, but not replicated. I think that's very important. We have an online space and online programs, but what we now have in our face-to-face programs is high flex. We allow that flexibility for our students because we recognize the need for individuals to be able to have changes of scenery, to be able to be in different spaces depending on where they are, what's happening in their lives, to be able to have that in the way that they learn, because the lessons that we've taken from the pandemic, we can't just go back to the way we were. There are many lessons that have come through, and it's ensuring that if in the workplace, hybrid and flexibility is how people operate, that should be reflected in the way that we teach our program. So we have started to bring that in. As you can imagine, from a institutional perspective, these things are fundamental challenges. How do we make sure that everyone has that right to flexibility? So it's not an overnight solution like the pandemic may have been, but it's a way that ensures that we continue to deliver the programs in the way that we believe is the correct way, but also puts that flexibility at the heart of how a student learns.
Right. And looking at the regional Atlanta perspective, but nationwide, and of course Goizueta attracting so many international applicants to the different programs, Renee, how do you like to frame the discussion of the different options, including, of course, cost? You know, we talked about the length of the programs and perhaps a more accelerated format that's attractive to them. How do you like to sort of sit down with them and just help them to think through different options, studying now, the qualifications that will bring, the cost, all of these in a STEM designated program that will then give them an H-1B visa to pursue the next steps of their career?
That's a wonderful question and not uncomplicated. So I actually, in the Career Management Center, we do partner with the admissions team, but unlike some of my colleagues here, I am not on the admissions team. So I am working with the students once they've already, been admitted to the programs, and so I'm not, involved in many of those conversations about cost of the programs. Where I come in is really when the students are interested in outcomes and the employment stats, the employment reports. And so where I can point to the success we've seen for example, the MSBA class of 22, we were fortunate, like many schools, with a good market where we had 100% offers and accepts, and a very healthy starting salary average of $100,000. So we're very proud of our students from the class of 22. So it made recruiting for the class of 23, I think, a little bit, and 24, a little bit lighter duty because of those results. And so when the students come to me, I'm able to let them know about different career tracks, different outcomes, what to expect, and the value of a specialty master's degree in seeing maybe higher compensation as opposed to just having a bachelor's degree.
Right. Paul, you'd laid down a marker as we talked about gender balance in the programs. Very impressive that the MSBA at Anderson has 60% women. How do you see that continue? What does that say about a program and the sort of doors it's opening, the career trajectories? A lot of talented young women identifying with the MSBA to give them this acceleration to their career.
It's an exciting moment for sure, right? To be able to look back at our recruiting process last year and be aiming at gender parity as we always are, and through just student choices ended up with 60% women was a real win for us and for the industry, frankly. I think we've been talking about the lack of women in STEM for decades and decades, and so the fact that we've got an area that's not only showing success, but one that continues to show demand on both sides, from the industry and from women in STEM, is very exciting. And that's true of diversity in general. I think our focus is at UCLA is to be as diverse as we possibly can in every dimension. And that is to say that if you're out there recruiting, and I'll echo what Renee said, it sort of begins and ends with outcomes. So we so we're aiming for outcomes. We're admitting with diversity in mind, and that's diversity in backgrounds, in their first gender parity. We've got as many engineers as we have economists, right? And so how do you manage a curriculum that will train them both in a balance of both technical and business skills, so that when they're out there and competing for jobs, they're not all competing for tech jobs or all for healthcare, but a solid mix. And I think that's what forces us to be holistic. We have folks from our career services team interviewing candidates. We've got folks who interview candidates working with our clients. So to constantly be embedding ourselves in every part of the process to make sure that we're delivering, and at the end of the day, it's a return on investment decision for a candidate, and we spend a lot of time talking to them about that. You mentioned cost, and cost is certainly something that I think about a lot, and I think about it as a former MBA student myself. And when you think about grad schools, I think we have to deliver not only on strong academics and career services, but student life. And so thinking on, in terms of quality as well as return on investment, I think is really the way that we differentiate.
Right. If we look, Paul, at the major media rankings that have often focused on the MBA, you have a couple around the Masters in Management or the Exec MBA. Take the very simple Forbes model that is ROI. It looks at the cost of the program, the opportunity cost involved, and then says, where are these graduates 5 years out? If Forbes was to do something like that for the MSBA, I mean, what would the numbers look like? Presumably the returns, the sort of salaries that Renee was describing of the MSBA graduates at Goizueta, it's really is a hot ticket, right?
It certainly is. Yeah, I would say they, in particular, looking at the combination of the fact that they're graduating at 23, 24 from their MSBA degree program and starting their career trajectory at 100,000, 150,000. Some as 170,000 last year, depending on where they're landing, says a lot about where they're going to be in 5 years' time. And what's important to us, of course, is that we maintain those connections and understand where people are going. And to your point, ROI is both financial and also career trajectory based. And I've been having a lot of conversations with our marketing department about the idea that our students aren't just going into a silo for data, right? They're ultimately transitioning into the CFO role or the COO role, or this, and these are big changes in the landscape. And as more and more programs and more roles demand a technical expertise in analytics, the better qualified for the are the people that can do the SQL and R and Python. So it's exciting to me to see where it will go. I'm not sure that Forbes would have a full answer yet, but it's so far so good in that sense.
Yeah, really encouraging. ROI has its limitations, and Alexandra, of course, every year you welcome such a diverse, talented group. As you look at some of the intangibles, there are tremendous salary gains that LBS graduates enjoy, but as you think about that overall experience, what are some of the intangibles? Say, we couldn't put a number on it, but the fact that they've had that experience, the majority experience that it's brought them, that's just invaluable.
I was going to say their network, but I think FT did just put a number on it for the recent ranking, but I would still stand by the comment. The network and the community, not everyone has had the exposure to the global community, to such a diverse setting. Some of the intangibles, are the sort of geographical changes you're able to just make in your career, not just the number on the bottom of the page, but that's going to impact you, for the rest of your life. The fact that you've been able to maybe transition companies, countries even. So I think it's about the sort of all-round richness of experience, being exposed to, entrepreneurs. We talk a lot about sort of lifelong learning at London Business School, so it doesn't just stop the minute you exit the door, but also, that experiential cross intergenerational learning as well. I think we were just touching on it earlier, the fact that you will be exposed to people through your electives in the classroom, through mentorship, to people that maybe you would never have met before. You're going to hear things that, you know, you don't know what you don't know, right? I think that's some of the intangibles that you will take away, that actually it really is a very transformational experience. And I think that stands across all the career stages, and probably whether you specialize or choose not to specialize as well. I think, you know, what you go into it with your goals, we do measure, you know, in our space, do they achieve them? And that's great. And some of the rankings do, but actually I think people, you know, they get so much more beyond that, things that they hadn't even thought that they were able to gain and to take away. So yes, so many intangibles, but I do think we are, you know, in the ROI space, I do think there are more and more measures coming in for some of the things that maybe are difficult, but you know, if you can't measure, you also can't change either. So do support some of those elements too.
And the P&Q article that I referenced earlier, that it starts with the introduction, imposter syndrome is real. So this, I don't know if it's tangible or intangible, you witness growing levels of self-confidence and assurance.
Yeah, I think so. I struggle somewhat with imposter syndrome, because sometimes I think people just feel like they don't belong in that space. And that's maybe because, not that they didn't belong, but maybe because those spaces are occupied, you know, very typically by a certain type of person. And I do think it's, you know, business schools' responsibility, as well as, you know, all the career destinations they go into, to advocate for those changes, to bring through more women, as you said, to bring through, you know, STEM females, and some of the ways to show that people are, you know, getting success are things like the career outputs and the salary. You know, you can put a stamp on it and say, well, actually, it is all of these things, but it's also the great endorsement of the things that people do want to measure, and these people absolutely deserve these spaces and are rightly rewarded and recognized. But yeah, I think absolutely people grow in confidence, and I think you get to be uncomfortable in a safe environment at business school. You know, you will do 360s, you will be challenged by groups that you work with, you'll come across people that you've never met before, that you've got to, you know, get on with and get your grades with, or maybe a team that you would never have chosen. But that does reflect, you know, what's going to happen to you in real life. You may not get to walk onto the desk you wanted in a finance company, for example. So I think we are setting them up for success, and the confidence to be able to own the fact that maybe they are uncomfortable in that space at times, and that's still okay because they've had experience of navigating it as well.
So if I take the theme, Aram, of finding my space, you know, I'd be like a kid in a candy store at Imperial. Well, I could do, you know, climate change, that really matters to me, but the healthcare industry is something I'm interested, you know, it's sort of spoiled for choice. How can candidates then, you know, look at all of those different options and find the right space for them, connecting with students, alums, of course, your colleagues in admissions? I'm sure you hold lots of events. What would you recommend to just get a deeper, better sense of the different options?
Yeah, it can be a minefield, no doubt. And it's not just looking at, if you're looking at a business school, you're also looking at other business schools and their offerings and trying to understand where you may fit. I think there's a couple of things that candidates should be doing is one, is the fundamentals. Why are they looking to go to a business school? What are they looking to get from that business school? I like to consider it like a Jenga tower almost. You know, you need a strong base to be able to build that Jenga tower. So as an individual, you need to have a strong foundation in terms of what you're looking to achieve. And then you can start to add on all the different elements. So if you know what you're trying to achieve through going to a business school, whether it is a very specific career path, or it's because you're looking to get a grounding in a range of different areas, or because you're really attracted by a certain academic knowledge or foundation, that will then help you to navigate that. If it is that career path, you know, we all, as we've been talking here, publish data on outcomes. So then you should start be looking at, okay, which are the programs that align to my outcomes? And what often you'll find is that a lot of programs can lead to very similar outcomes, because there's a lot of hard skills that you're going to learn, but actually there's a lot of soft skills that you learn despite the program or the specifics that's in there, that will allow you to get into a certain role. So it's about bringing it back to who you want to be, what you're looking to achieve, There are going to be some programs at all of our business schools that are very specific for certain areas, but there are also going to be some which allow you for lots of different opportunities. So if you can nail down what you're looking for or what you're trying to achieve, you can at least start to mitigate down. And then it is about talking to people. LinkedIn, reach out to alumni of those programs, or in the companies that you're looking to go into. Or, you know, I'm sure we all have some version of ambassadors on Unibuddy or other platforms. Talk to these individuals. I think the biggest challenge is there's so much that you can do that you kind of get overawed, so you don't do anything. Well, if you can take one thing away, is take one step, and then at least you start that journey in terms of a conversation about what is best for you.
Well, I hope we'll get the chance to make sandcastles on the sand with that very solid platform and base that you described. Renee, you're not so far from the sea in Atlanta. I'd just like to finish with this theme of outcomes, because it's easy to focus on already the great opportunities as people graduate. But you know, whether it's the Master in Analytical Finance, whether it's the MSBA, these are actually programs that are going to reward you not just in that first year, but 5 years, 10 years down the road. Is that something that you really encourage people to think about in that sort of time frame?
Yes, great question. It is. I think that they're probably it's going to be very different looking at the MSBA and the MAF in terms of outcomes. I think that MSBA, that story is still being written. Our program is now in its 6th year. And so, you know, I would be very interested also in seeing a study that you mentioned there after the, you know, 5 years out, from the first graduating class. But I do think that since the majority of our students for the MSBA are international students, after the 3-year STEM OPT period, the students are looking for H-1B, to your earlier question. And if they are not securing the H-1B, many of them do return to their home country. And so I know the H-1B is the long-term goal for many students. So we are, you know, keeping an eye on the market and seeing, you know, certainly partnering with employers who are open to international students and to STEM OPT as well. So I do think for the MAF, the analytical finance, we're still in our inaugural year. And so we are still seeing outcomes come in for this first class. And of course, the popular analyst title is, you know, it's still, you know, still reigns supreme with the MAF program, just like we see with MSBA. So as more and more outcomes come in, we'll be able to, you know, compile that, those data and an employment report there. And we'll be watching closely to see the career trajectory for that program as well, but we have very high hopes.
Right. And Paul, just to finish, it must be so exciting to have a drawing board, imagine a program and its potential, and then to see that potential delivering, and the energy that you see in the classrooms at Anderson. Where are we headed next? And just your message for our viewers as they think about any of the great options that we've discussed on this panel, you know, to connect with the school, talk with students, and just really think deeply, as Aram recommended, about what you're looking for as the next experience. What would your advice be?
Yeah, I would start with what Aram said actually about fit, right? I think you know, as you're choosing your specialty master's degree, fit is going to matter. And I think we see a lot of students who are interested in working for, you'll see FANG, Facebook, Apple, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, right? But to fit in with FANG, you could be a fit with us and with FANG. And so what does that mean? And doing that exploration internally to know, you know, where you are today and where you're going is very important. And to recognize that the world is constantly changing. You know, if there's anything that's true about these incoming generations of students, is that they are used to a reckoning in every part of their life. And so that's a good thing for us. And we think a lot about what that will mean for UCLA Anderson's DNA as a school. And we talk a lot about transformational leadership. And so to become a transformational leader, you've got to work through a program that will transform you. And we think a lot about what does that mean? You know, how do you take someone who's purely a quant and get them to be more of an improv performer or you know, a communicator at the top levels of a company? And so I would say, when you're looking at programs, look for the fit, look for, how your natural state fits in with that culture, but also how your future state fits in with what they're offering. And I think that every one of our programs on the panel represents a real strength in that sense. And so thank you for having us all.
Well, that's a lovely way to conclude, because you remind us of a world in constant change, but just how consistently I love these panels at Centre Court, and that's always a reflection of the panelists and the voices that we bring together. So to start the Centre Court Specialised Masters Festival, to Alexandra and Aram, to Renee and Paul, thank you for getting us off to such a great start. Our viewers, of course, have lots to follow up with. We're going to turn this into an article to share some of the insights that you brought us, but truly, thanks for a great start to the festival.